In a tense and revealing exchange, Senator Chris Van Hollen put Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the hot seat, pressing him over what he described as Donald Trump's pattern of corruption and how it collides directly with America's foreign policy interests. Van Hollen didn't mince words, arguing that personal gain, political favoritism, and blurred ethical lines don't just damage trust at home, they weaken U.S. credibility abroad. As Rubio attempted to defend the administration's record, the exchange exposed a deeper question hanging over Washington. When corruption meets diplomacy, who really pays the price? America, or the world watching it?
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to discuss corruption in the White House and its intersection with our foreign policy. The President and his family have used the office of the presidency to pocket $1.4 billion plus since he was sworn in. A New York Times analysis entitled "Trump's Plundering of America" indicates that some of that is a result of the president selling corruption here at home, but much of it relates to the president selling out U.S. interests overseas to make a killing for his family, including giving away sensitive U.S. semiconductor and AI technologies to the UAE, while the UAE pumped $2 billion into one of the Trump family ventures. And then there are all the other Trump deals that are intertwined with tariff or foreign policy matters. Golf courses in Saudi Arabia and Vietnam, Trump hotels and office buildings in other countries, and of course there's the $400 million jet from Qatar. The list goes on and on. By any measure, this is the most corrupt administration in American history. We also see the president wielding U.S. power overseas in a way that advances the interests of his billionaire buddies at the expense of American interests. It was Ron Lauder, who has business ventures in Greenland, who reportedly first put the idea of grabbing Greenland into President Trump's mind. And in the case of Venezuela, President Trump has said he talked to oil executives about toppling Maduro and going into Venezuela before anyone in Congress knew. We know that in President Trump's mind, deposing Maduro was not about stopping the flow of fentanyl or drugs in the United States. He cut the budget for DEA. He pardoned the former Honduran president convicted of drug running. And the new president, Delcy Rodriguez, has herself been long suspected by DEA of being involved in drug smuggling. She's also a longtime hardened communist leader, so this operation certainly was not about bringing more freedom and democracy to Venezuela. In fact, the president told us what it was all about at his big press conference after seizing Maduro. The president said it was about oil, oil, oil. He used the word oil 19 times, never mentioned democracy or freedom or human rights. And so the pattern of corruption is clear. Now, President Trump has said publicly that he had communications with folks from the oil industry about going into Venezuela before anyone here in Congress was notified. Mr. Secretary, simple yes or no question. Were you with President Trump during any of those conversations he had with people with oil interests in Venezuela about the possibility of deposing Maduro?
That's not a simple yes or no question, but I can answer it quickly, and that is the president always elicits opinions from all sorts of people, including, for example, Chevron has an active license in Venezuela. They operate in Venezuela. They've been doing so even when the sanctions were in place. So of course you would ask Chevron, what is your opinion of Delcy Rodriguez? What are your opinion of their economy and of their prospect? But the notion that somehow the president authorized this challenge at the urging of oil executives is absurd. That never happened.
Mr. Secretary, I'm asking whether you were with the president.
That never happened. I couldn't be with him because it never happened. The oil executives were not involved whatsoever in any of the planning on this matter. None.
Did the president, as he said publicly, inform them about the U.S. operations?
I think all of those executives learned about this operation the same time everybody else did.
Well, President Trump has said the opposite in public.
No.
Yes, he has. I mean, he said it. I think it was aboard Air Force One on an airplane. It's on public record. You can take a look. Look, Paul Singer, who you know, gave $8 million toward Trump's 2024 campaign. Conveniently, through his hedge fund, he's acquired Citgo out of bankruptcy, which is suddenly very, very valuable. Did you or President Trump have any communications with Paul Singer about Venezuelan oil in the months leading up to the military action in Venezuela?
I can tell you I did not, and I would be very surprised what the president did in that regard. And in fact, that Singer position that you've outlined, which is not just him but other creditors, was actually was blocked. We don't want to see. It's one of the reasons why we had to do this account in a third country in the interim, is because we don't want it to be something that's picked apart by creditors.
I appreciate that, and we'll monitor it carefully. There's also Vitol. They've been given a license for Venezuelan oil worth about $250 million. Vitol's senior partner, John Addison, gave $6 million to the Trump-aligned PACs in the last cycle. And the list goes on, Mr. Secretary. And I have to say that when you have the President of the United States himself, after taking Maduro, get up and say this was about oil, 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 it does make all of us ask the question whether he put men and women in the U.S. military at risk simply so he could grab that oil.
Well, that oil,
yeah,
and I don't know if you were here. I think you were here the whole hearing. I don't think you had left. Number one, the only reason why we use Trafi and Vitol is simply because in the short term, we had to move 50 million barrels of oil that were stuck. And Venezuela needed to turn that into cash so that they wouldn't have systemic collapse. And the fastest way to do it in the short term is for the traders to do it, because that's in the business that they're in. That is not the permanent structure. The permanent structure we want to see is a normal oil industry where it's sold directly. You know, companies have licenses down there, they have an arrangement to pay royalties, and they move the oil directly to their refineries or sell it in the global market, not through middlemen. Yeah. The only reason why they were used in this instance is because we had an acute short-term problem, which is how do we provide funding from their own revenue, not ours, to keep their government afloat. So in essence, we allowed Venezuela to use their own oil to generate revenue to pay teachers and firefighters and police officers and keep the function of government operating so we didn't have systemic collapse. But that system with those traders, that is not the long-term plan here at all.
My only point, Mr. Secretary, is those folks who gave a lot of money to the Trump campaign have done very well as a result of what's happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Daines.